Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Blood Red channel and welcome back to the Debrief. We are live following Liverpool's first pre-season game of the season, a 4-2 victory over Karlsruher SC. I believe they're aside from the Bundesliga 2. Pretty boring first half, but a good win in the end, Matt, wasn't it? I have to admit, I have celebrated 91st minute winners more than that. But, it was an entertaining second half, wasn't it? And a decent way to start pre-season.
Yeah, it was good to see them back, wasn't it? I think Liverpool have got, heading into the summer, Liverpool had a lot to do. They've certainly got a lot more to do now, as we'll come to. But it was good to see, Szoboszlai and McAllister look pretty decent. I thought Diogo Jota looked sharp, certainly better than what Darwin Núñez did, even though Núñez scored. I didn't think he looked at his sharpest, but look, it's hard to read too much into the first game of pre-season. Obviously, they've been doing loads of sessions, triple sessions, Jurgen Klopp said beforehand. So it's been, a tough sort of 10 days or whatever it is for the players who've been there from the start of pre-season. There's much more to come from them, but the new season is just around the corner, and we are, already starting to look at a few different clues of how Liverpool might line up, how sort of things might fall into shape. I thought it was interesting, for example, that they continued with the hybrid role. Obviously, Trent kind of played the role of Fabinho and Conor Bradley playing that Trent role in the first half. So that was interesting that they did that. There are certain things that we can learn from these games. But yeah, like you say, the result doesn't particularly matter. I wasn't that bothered that Liverpool ended up winning the game, but it can be no bad thing that a few of your strikers get onto the score sheet and a few young players look good, a few other bits as well. So yeah, plenty of positives, plenty of things for us to talk about. And I think you take that for day one. And I'm sure there'll be much, much bigger tests for Liverpool over the course of the summer before that Chelsea game.
Yeah, you mentioned there, obviously, goals from sort of each of the number 9 options up top for Jurgen Klopp. Sort of not really helped his selection headache for that first game of the season. A lot of debate whether it'll be Núñez, Jota. Gakpo was probably in the first spot after the end of last season in that number 9 role if we're playing a front three. But, with Gakpo sort of picking up right where he's left off, obviously Jota firing those 2 late winners, do you think Núñez has sort of come out of that, despite having opened the scoring in, the second minute, he's sort of come out of that still dead last in the running for who's going to be starting up top in that front three?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to read too much into it, isn't it? I think it was interesting that he started alongside Salah and Diaz in terms of the first half team. That was obviously the stronger one. And I think as much as you don't want to be too harsh on him, he's going to have to make a bit of an impression, I think, in these friendlies. Obviously, there's only so much you can do in training. I'm sure, that they're working on him and trying to improve a few things with him. But I think at some point it's got to click because, like you say, they've got loads of other options. I thought Diogo Jota looked good. Núñez obviously scores, but for some reason tried to pass it to Salah when he was behind him, got a little bit lucky, from the second one to score from that position. He wasn't really going to miss from there. But you'd like to think that at some point you start to see a little bit more of the instinctive sort of version of Núñez that we saw at Benfica. I think, if that was him and he was absolutely full of confidence and he was flying, he would have scored, first attempt rather than needing that second one. And that's what you've kind of got to see from him, really. I think, for me right now, he would be the 5th out of the 5 in terms of the attack. I think I'd like to see Diogo Jota as it stands for the first game of the season. But, Cody Gakpo was there as well. I thought he was good. I think there's going to probably be a few opportunities for Gakpo in midfield as well, which might be interesting to see if they kind of went with a bit of a front four almost with him and Jota there as well. Obviously, they combined in the second half as well. So, look, I think there's still things to work on. I don't think any of us expected a completely different Darwin Núñez on day one, but hopefully the goal can give him, something to cling on to and kick on from. Hopefully in the rest of the friendlies, they've still got 4 more games before that Chelsea match. They've still got plenty of time to work on stuff, but I think it's going to have to take a little bit of time. I think it will help that they've got a functioning midfield behind them. Hopefully, it'll help that Diaz hopefully and Jota as well can stay fit, and the kind of pressure is across all 5 of them rather than just on his shoulders. But it's a big season for Núñez. I'm still confident that he can come good, but right now, if I had to say who was going to be in that number 9 role for the game against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, I think my money probably would be on Diogo Jota.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Jota sort of firing himself into place for that starting position against Chelsea, that first game of the season. But as you say, we can't really read too much into a pre-season game like this, especially with it being the first one. So with that in mind, we are going to move on to talking about, I mean, despite the Reds kicking off their pre-season today, it's nowhere near the biggest Liverpool FC story going around at the moment. A lot of conflicting reports online, so forgive me if I get some of these details wrong, but supposedly there's been a £12 million fee agreed with Liverpool for Jordan Henderson. It's looking like he's going to get a 3-year deal, obviously joining Steven Gerrard's team. I believe it's Al Ettifaq in the Saudi Pro League. I mean, left out of the squad today, it's rumoured that he's going to be leaving the training camp. It's just a very strange way for his Liverpool career to end, if this is it, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, it still doesn't quite feel real, does it, in terms of him leaving the way that he's going. I think it's probably not the worst thing for Liverpool to move one player on in that midfield out of him and Fabinho, but to lose both in the same summer would be difficult. Obviously, would take Liverpool to losing 6 midfielders essentially as well, and including the out of contract and the end of the loan for Arthur Melo as well. I mean, it's a lot of change, isn't it? It's a hard one, I think, to understand from his perspective. Yeah, as you say, as we understand that the move has been agreed, he's obviously given the green light to that. Liverpool have been prepared to let him go, but I still struggle to get my head around the move to Saudi, to be honest. I know a lot of people will look at it and think that the money he's going to earn and that opportunity is too good to turn down, but I just don't really think that you can justify it in other ways. I think it's a sad way for his Liverpool career to end. You look at the reception that Roberto Firmino got at the end of the season. Jordan Henderson would have got something similar. He would have been offered a proper opportunity to say goodbye to Anfield, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Obviously, there's loads of issues, I think, as well, in terms of him moving to that particular part of the world, given his history of kind of leading the way on other social issues and stuff like that. So I think it's disappointing in a number of different ways, really. We've discussed it at length across the course of the last week. Purely in terms of a football sense, I don't think 12 million is not exactly game-changing money for Liverpool either. They've lost the club captain, a player that would have played quite a lot of football, I think, next season. Maybe not started every week, but would have certainly made a significant number of appearances. So it leaves a lot of question marks, I think, in terms of the football, in terms of the other side of it as well. But Liverpool are going to have to get in at least a couple more midfielders this summer. They've not got that long to do it. They've not got long to implement those signings as well. So I think you can look at it one or two ways. In terms of what Liverpool do from here, maybe you can be a little bit worried they're going into the new season as it stands without a holding midfielder. The other side of it, as I've seen in a couple of the comments there, is that it's an exciting opportunity for Liverpool to go out and get a couple of more players in and do something exciting in the transfer market. But I think for me, I'm somewhere in between. I think there is an opportunity if Liverpool get it right. I think the big issue really is that there's no one obvious who you'd look at and think immediately they're the one, go and get them and it's fine. I think if this had have happened and we'd have known about it 6 months ago, maybe Liverpool go for someone like a Moises Caicedo or maybe a Declan Rice or someone like that. Again, I know that the price is absolutely enormous, but I think Liverpool, they've been backed into a little bit of a corner in terms of, they won't want to stand in his way, but at the same time, it gives them, I think, a real problem. It's a bit of an issue, I think, in terms of leadership, in terms of leaving a hole in the squad. It'd be interesting, I think, to see what happens next, but you'd like to think that Liverpool have had enough time now. It's been brewing for a week or so, as has Fabinho as well. You'd like to think Liverpool have got one or two plans in place, and maybe this time next week they've got a couple of players in, and suddenly those sort of fears can be a little bit eased.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they've identified a few options in that number 6 role that we obviously haven't. Because I mean, I was speaking with friends over the weekend about the Fabinho deal, and they were asking me, who would you go and get to replace him? And I struggle to really come up with a realistic answer. Like the number 6 market just isn't that great at the moment. And I mean, losing just one and having to replace him in Fabinho would be tricky enough. But I think losing both of them, and as you say, we lost 6 midfielders. I think even the most ardent critic of our midfield last season, I think if you'd have said we're going to lose 6 players from the midfield and bring in it would probably have to be at least 4 now. Do you think that is just a bit too much? It's putting a lot of pressure on the recruitment department, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it goes back to last summer, doesn't it? Because if Liverpool had have done a midfielder last summer, it would have been at least one there where you've got 12 months of bedding in and you've got that kind of succession plan. Like I said, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, to be honest, to get 40 million, as it will be for Fabinho if he goes. I think that's not too bad. Henderson, I think that the fee is on the lower side, but he's 33 years of age. He's on a fairly big wage. I think you can kind of justify it to an extent. It's just so much to do, isn't it, in one summer? There's so many questions. I'm not quite sure who they will turn to. We've heard a few names that have been listed. I think that the Sofian Amrabat one is the only one of that list that would kind of be an instant player that you could just plug in and play in that number 6 role. I mean, Ryan Gravenberch has been linked, not really a number 6. There's others on that list. Calvin Phillips, I just don't see that happening in any sort of world, really. Even if Liverpool wanted him, I don't think Manchester City would let him go. So it's going to be interesting to see which way they turn. As you say, they're going to have to get 2 more from this point. I think if they lose Fabinho and Henderson, there's possibly an argument for even going out and maybe doing 3. But I think that might be a little bit on the optimistic side. But I'm sure Liverpool will have a plan. They always have a plan for all of these sorts of things in terms of all of the positions. At least you could say, at least it's a Fabinho and a Henderson. I know there's been a little bit of chatter about Luis Diaz potentially being targeted by the Saudis and stuff like that, which I can't imagine for a second that he would want to do that. But at least it's a couple of players where it will be disruptive and it will be a little bit difficult, I think, for Liverpool. Maybe it slows them down a little bit at the start of next season, but yeah, there's arguments either way, isn't there? You could keep going around in circles, but I think at least they've got a couple of good midfielders. We've seen from today, McAllister and Szoboszlai, they're going to be really excellent additions, I think, for Liverpool. Get one more who's that sort of nailed on, ready to hit the ground running, and it could just about work out for Liverpool. But it just seems like a summer of change, really, for everyone, doesn't it? Manchester City, I think, are going to have that. Chelsea obviously have got that. There's lots of other teams. Tottenham have got a new manager. It's tricky to sort of know exactly what the Premier League is going to look like next season. It would have been an opportunity, I think, for Liverpool to go out and really show everyone what they're about. The worry now is it takes a little bit of time for that to settle. But we'll see what happens. From what we've seen today, positive signs. It's still a bit of a shock about Jordan Henderson, but I'm sure Liverpool will find a way, and I'm sure if they really wanted to block it and if they really felt like they couldn't get by without him next season, they would have done just that and stopped it from happening. So I'm just sort of interested to see really from this point what the plan is, and I'm sure we'll get to find that out in the next few days.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see what the makeup of Liverpool's midfield options are come that first game against Chelsea. As you say, hopefully some contingency plans in place to get a couple of number 6s or more defensive-minded midfielders in. But that is all we're going to have time for on the debrief today. We will, of course, be across any breaking news. We'll be back on the morning stream live tomorrow at 10 a.m. But for now, thanks, Matt, for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.